commercial building. We also did notice a truck that failed to negotiate on a hill around Ntinda Stretcher Road. Now, luckily in that incident, lives were not lost, but anything could have happened. Again, brings us to a call of caution. What's happening? This overloading business, how are we going to beat it? But we also did see a truck that also rammed into other 5 vehicles, and we lost a couple of people. So this weekend was quite a heavy one, especially when it comes to accidents. Well, this morning we have a lot to talk about between us and you, our lovely viewers, and also to review this week, considering that it's going to be a very special week, especially for the Christian fraternity, all the way from Thursday until Monday, knowing very well that Christians have been doing their Lent right now in the 40 days of Lent, and this weekend could mark the end of this Lent, and obviously special days to be celebrated. Well, this morning I'm joined, of course, by the usual faces. I do have Robert Kirabo, Nyonyintono, I have Mollen, Kenyena, and Felix Nkunda. We are here ready to start off the week. Felix, good morning. Welcome back from the weekend.
Good morning, Philo. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. How was your weekend?
It was great. It was great.
Did you make it to Palm Sunday?
Yes, I did. I went to church. Very interesting preachings, I must say.
Very long readings as well.
Very a gospel of I don't know how long minutes. Yes.
Oh my God, I just love the way how church does it. Then you have different characters.
Yes.
But then it's more beautiful in Uganda. Anyway, I personally,
I think in all different mother tongues.
Probably.
Yes.
Probably,
because it's really customized and you can feel the gospel very well.
And
yes.
That part when they are saying mumute, mumute. You know how church organizes and they put different
yes.
people. It's a crowd and one is speaking like Jesus. But then there's a beautiful part when they talk about Peter, Paul, and definitely a bit of Judas. Now,
yes.
how Jesus told them before the cock crows 3 times, you would have denied me 3 times. Guess what? It just happened in a blink, and then the guy only got to remember when he had actually. So it's hilarious how human nature can turn against itself. But that about Sunday was quite beautiful. Trust me, I enjoyed church. The homily was on point. There's a lot to take home when it comes to this particular time of when we talk about like the triumphant entry.
Yes.
You know, how we do the palms. It's quite beautiful, and it's very sightly for some of us who are in the Catholic. But also this week is Holy Week.
Oh yes, very.
It's Holy Week.
Sure.
It's a week we use to revisit our spiritual fabric entirely. I expect I'll be going to Rubaga for my penitentia. I don't know if you remember your catechism.
The penance, holy penance.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And if you remember having read your catechism, doing catechism, you know how many, is it in Uganda we say, emirimu, emeka, muntu agenda okwejusa gy'ayina. So in English, I don't know, you did it in English? Did you do your Holy Communion and in English?
I actually did it in Uganda.
Oh,
yeah, I did it in Uganda.
Yeah, myself as well. So how many, I don't want jobs. How many, like you're supposed to do 4, look for your sins. To feel remorse for your...
Yeah, I think to feel remorseful, yes.
Then the 3rd one, you pronounce them before a priest or an ordained person or minister.
Yes.
Then the 4th is you do what you've been asked to do by that person. Normally, they tell us to do about maybe 10
Hail Marys,
and
yes.
then,
anyway, depending on how
I'm going to be doing that. Depending on the gravity of sin.
Depending on the gravity of your sins, the magnitude of your sins.
The man can tell you to press 6 rosaries.
But they tell you more than 10 Hail Marys, my friend.
I don't know what the experience is about penance. Just lastly, let me tell you a small story about, I remember when we were back in seminary, we used to have a priest, sadly, unfortunately now he'd passed on, Father John in Subi. Now, that guy was old and he had a memory problem. So time for kwejusa, the guy would have a line.
Yes.
Like you would be in the DH and all other priests don't have anyone, but they all want
Yeah, because they felt secure. They knew. They
would forget it
yes.
before you leave. Like, even by the time he's forgiving you, be telling you, "Na ye wakoze chibwana wakatonda." I'm like, so that's but that is that you know that walk of shame you have when you're from the prison. But anyway, I'll be going through that today. I'll be visiting my home church, that is Rubaga. As we get into this Holy Week, I want to take this opportunity also to encourage every other Catholic out there, go do some penitence as well. Let's be kind, let's spread the love. Twegairire nnyo, kwegaira in English is pray. Yeah, let's pray a lot. Kwegairira a lot. This week has a lot of things we have to do as Christians.
Go get your spirit ready, as of course we are getting ready for the big day. Mollen, good morning. Welcome back from the weekend.
Yes, a very good morning. The weekend was actually quite fine, I should say, and yeah, it was. It was a good one, and of course Sunday was the climax of it, and I think the most beautiful. I also did enjoy that long reading with characters, and by the way, where I was, Father Simon Peter in Bunamwaya did say that he also enjoyed, he had done the Uganda version, he had never done the English version. So when he did, it's like, that felt different. But everything, you know, they take you through these tapes and you see different people making their readings and you're like, And I think I also had my experience in Lunyankole, so I'd really not, you know, gotten into that whole thing. But there's the way it also, if you to be careful, the English one also kind of brings in a new feel. So to me that was really holy, but also looking at what we do this week. You know, throughout the Lent season, we are encouraged to be, you know, to repent our sins, to be holy, to be friendly. But I feel like this week puts a lot of pressure. It's like, I feel like it's more, you have to be more holy. And also I think one thing that Christians, maybe not that the priests will be teaching you, but forgiving is that one thing. We might go and ask for forgiveness within this week, but you yourself being able to forgive is something that is quite key. And then there is this whole issue of forgiving and not forgetting. I don't know where we find a middle ground, but the moment you take a decision to forgive that person, forgive them. Otherwise, I know people who would easily forgive and be like, you know, for the good of my faith, I'm just going to forgive this person. But then they wouldn't even greet them when they meet them. You haven't forgiven. We're not saying forget what they did or, you know, forget that they were bad people, but at least accommodate them in your life. Again, don't go in church and say, oh, God, I forgive so and so, and then the next day you see them, you can't even greet them, you can't even look them in the face. I think that's a kind of different. But also, in the same spirit, we were encouraged, even at the beginning of Lent, to be charitable. And Easter is coming. What can you give within this week, you know, to help people that are unable to even celebrate Easter? We know that there are a lot of communities that are vulnerable. It's also a good time this week. Take time this week if there is something you can give. And there are always organizations or communities that are actually collecting stuff that you can give to the vulnerable during Easter. So if you see that, or if you don't know where those are, you can actually go to your parish, to your churches, and be able to give. It feels good to give.
Absolutely. It would also feel so good to receive, especially if, you know, they're giving you without any conditions, but you also have to return the favor, do it for somebody else. You know, it works like that. But Roberts, good morning. Did you go to church yesterday? Welcome back from the weekend.
Oh, thank you. Lovely morning to you and the entire team. Well, I didn't go to church yesterday.
Okay.
We're going through a trying moment. Many of us here at UBC TV, but also our colleagues at State House, most of those on the presidential press unit, following the loss of our very own, that is Dennis Kalanzi Blair. Now, this young man, he was sick, but we thought he wouldn't go very soon. And we were very sure that he would recover. He's one young man, those on Star TV, he was doing a program called Agafa Muchondo, which happens to be talking about the works of the president, what he does during the week, the travels and all that. But he was also, before joining presidential press unit, he was working with Star TV. And I got an opportunity. He once also did some work with Star FM. I got an opportunity as a workmate, but also a friend. And one unique thing he had, this young man was very smart. Very, very smart. If there are people that, even if it is casual, he's smart, very, very clean, and of course charming as well. Now when I received the news that he had gone to be with our Lord Jesus Christ, it kind of shook me, having, of course, we are still mourning Edward Muhumuza from the Jansim fraternity. Now we lose another one. And I think these are young men. I'm not saying that old should die. No, we want them around. But there's some age. A person dying before 40, you know, that age. We say in Uganda, abadda akyali muto. Yet if someone dies at 1 year, abadda akuze. But, you know, that pain, I'm still trying, but he will be buried today in Champisi at 2 p.m. We pray that the good Lord may strengthen his family. But also some good news.
Yes.
Government launched a tractor scheme for Karamoja.
Okay.
In this season.
Somebody could use some good news right
now. Iron sheets we can for now wait, and the goats.
No, we are not going to wait, Robert. We can work alongside.
We can work alongside. Now those guys are going to be having tractors. They at least work on their land in this particular season. After one district, they'll go to another district so that they can grow some food in this area. But also scary, I was watching a report where World Health Organization came out and said, for Uganda to be specific, 1 in every 7 people has a mental problem. So now I move counting, 1, 2, 3, we are 7 here, I locate a mental problem. I'm like, okay. So this is where we are. People should be very mindful of their mental health.
That's true. But also looking at what's happening in Kenya, you know, things have been a little bit tough, especially when it comes to the protests that have been fronted by opposition party leader, that is Raila Odinga. Now, it was very, very interesting yesterday after the President, William Ruto, asked or extended, I could say, an olive branch to the opposition leader, inviting him to have talks so that they can have a dialogue, so that they can talk about the bigger issue here and to make sure that these protests cease. And indeed, Raila did ask his people to put these protests on hold, and coming today, Monday and Thursday, initially as they had planned, that they would protest until their cries were heard. So he did ask his people to first put all these protests on hold, to have this conversation with the president and to see if they can actually come to a resolution to make sure that you know, some of these issues that they were protesting about are responded to positively. And I will tell you that no demonstrations or protests should be expected in Nairobi today, or at least this week, as we await to see what's going to happen there. But it's very interesting because I did see a couple a couple people react on Twitter saying that he shouldn't have given in, he shouldn't have listened to him because what is the guarantee that you know, good things or good conversations are going to be had after? What
alternative did he have? You know, there's
exactly.
things you can't sustain, and this we must accept. Rebellion, demonstration in Africa, I must quote, is not sustainable. One, in Africa, in very few countries, but a country like Kenya, maybe those that live on bread only, but you see where people wake up every morning and fend for their families.
Yes.
I've seen Kasita here. They come out, to Garama Duka behind the shop, sweeper buy. You know, they're conducting business. So the very people get irritated. You're going to cause mayhem in Nairobi, where people have come, they have taxes. In some African countries, demonstrations are not sustainable. You just use them to prove a point and have corresponding efforts put there. But you can't sustain them. African governments in some countries, they'll oppress, they'll hit, and you have no one to demonstrate along with you, and you're a lonely wolf. So you can't sustain them.
I think we also have to appreciate the fact that Raila Odinga has been one of those, I think, peaceful opposition leaders, really. And it's unfortunate that recently they had that protest. But if you look at the history of Raila Odinga, even with the past governments, he's one person who is always looking for talks. And I think he did that with Kenyatta at one point. It didn't work. we're hoping that William Ruto does bring something, because I know that he also wants for Kenyans to be okay. And when you saw on Twitter, when people were saying we shouldn't have done this, we don't need to do this, we will be behind you, I think most of the of what was coming through from Raila's part was that, you know, he kept assuring people that, look, we actually need to have peace, because at the end of the day, it's the Kenyans that are actually suffering from these protests. So I think it was quite a good call. We do hope that it can bring a little bit of peace in Kenya.
Yeah, one thing for certain though is that as a leader, you can never have 100% support. Even when you make a good decision, there will be a faction of people that don't believe in it. Even if you make a bad decision, there are those that will not be exactly with you. So sometimes you really have to be a bit intentional when it comes to what it is that you are looking for. Anyway, right now we'll go through some of our local stories and international stories as well. Robert.
We begin with President Yoweri Museveni, who still stands firm on homosexuality. Well, the president, while meeting a delegation of members of parliament from about 22 African countries and those from the United Kingdom, said and called upon African nations to reject the promotion of homosexuality on the continent, describing the vice as a big threat and danger to procreation of the human race. The president was hosting a delegation of members of parliament from over 22 African countries and the United Kingdom, who had conveyed at Entebbe for a 2-day first ever inter-parliamentary conference on family values and sovereignty at State House Entebbe.
Reverend Canon Godfrey Mbise has been consecrated and installed the new Bishop of Muhabura Diocese. Bishop Mbise replaces Bishop Kamra Mugisha, who has been the Bishop of Muhabura since July 27. Hundreds of Christians, local leaders, politicians and other dignitaries did throng St. Andrew's Sesame Cathedral grounds in Kisoro district to welcome the third Bishop of the Diocese of Muhabura. And the Archbishop of Uganda, Dr. Stephen Kazimba Mugaru, consecrated and enthroned the bishop with support of other bishops.
And moving on, friends and relatives yesterday held a funeral service for Dennis Blair Kalanzi, who died at Mulago Hospital last Saturday. Prayers for the scribe who worked with UBC and Presidential Press Unit were held in his home area. He was born on the 8th of December 1985 in Namayumba, Wachiso, and died at Mulago Hospital on the 1st of April this year. Dennis Blair was famous for the Presidential Press Unit program Agafa Embuga.
Now, government, through the Ministry of Education and Sports, has warned health institutions across the country against promoting homosexuality. Now, the warning was sounded by the principal of Uganda Allied Health and Management Science Rose, Mugumisiriza, who represented the Ministry of the National Allied Health Training Institution Cultural Gala in Jinja. Now, she also tasked the students to focus on their cultural norms and values.
Other international stories, Finland's main Conservative Party has claimed victory in a tightly fought parliamentary election. With all the votes counted on Sunday, the centre-right National Coalition Party, NCP, came out on top at 20.8%. They were followed by the right-wing Populist Party, the Finns, with 20.1%, while Prime Minister Sanna Marin's Social Democrats garnered 19.9%. With the top three parties each getting around 20% of the vote, no party is in a position to form a government alone. Over 2,400 candidates from 22 parties were vying for the 200 seats in the Nordic countries' parliament. Well-known Russian military blogger Vladlen Tatarsky has been killed in a blast in a cafe in St. Petersburg, according to Russian news agencies, quoting sources as saying it was caused by an explosive device. Russian news reports said Tatarsky was killed in the explosion at the street food bar No. 1 cafe on Sunday. 25 people were wounded and 19 of them were hospitalized, according to the regional governor, Alexander Beglov. Tataski is the pen name for Maxim Fomin, who had accumulated more than 560,000 followers on Telegram and was one of the most prominent of the influential military bloggers who have provided an often critical running commentary on Russia's war in Ukraine. He was among hundreds of attendees at a lavish Kremlin ceremony last September to proclaim Russia's annexation of 4 partly occupied regions of Ukraine, a move that most countries at the United Nations condemned as illegal.
Now, Burkina Faso has expelled 2 French journalists working for newspapers Le Monde and Liberation. The 2 newspapers said on Sunday, accusing the authorities of seeking to stifle freedom of speech with an escalating crackdown on foreign media. Liberation said its correspondent Agnes Fevrier and Le Monde's Sophie Douche arrived in Paris early on Sunday after they were summoned separately for questioning by the military authorities on Friday and later notified of their expulsion. The 2 are journalists of perfect integrity who worked in Burkina Faso legally with valid visas and accreditations. We strongly protect against these absolutely unjustified expulsions, Liberation said in an editorial statement on its website. There were no statements from authorities in Burkina Faso, and the French Foreign Ministry did not immediately respond to a request for comment from the paper. Now, multiple studies have shown that Americans tend to misjudge how other countries in this country feel about climate change. People chronically underestimate how worried others are about the threat and how much they accept the science and whether they support all manners of policy solutions. Taking a quick guess, what percentage of people on the streets in your town would feel alarmed about climate change, and how would the answer be about talking to others about your own views? A shared misperception of how others think or behave poses a challenge to the collective action on problems like climate change, according to the writers at the University of Princeton.
Well, we do still have more stories coming through from our dailies, the Daily Monitor. Felix, what are we looking at?
Well, of course, in the Daily Monitor, the big headlines: Narubare, Chira Dam flows pack warnings, and also UPDF to buy more land for at least 110 billion for Katonga Museum, and also autistic children thriving in model schools, and Kitutu faces arrest over snubbing summons. There are now 3,000 people down in Makerere every year, government. But of course, also beautiful picture here for some people who did turn out for Palm Sunday.
Wonderful. Anyway, right now, when we talk about your health, it's very important. How have you tried to make sure that you prioritize it? Robert, over here, ready to spread the gospel. I see you're full of energy this morning. What's going on?
You see, when you take these drinks, you're full of life. That is, hallelujah, jinga tea, hallelujah, tamarind drink. They're immune boosters, you know.
Okay.
Have a body that you can command and feel it's moving in line with everything. It's just 1,500. Any of these drinks, any retail shop, any supermarket, they are there and they are for you. So please buy 1 or 2.
Well, there you go. Well, we're going for a break. When we get back, we'll be having discussions about the budget framework that was released by the opposition party on Friday. We need to look at a number of things they did prioritize and how different is it from our budget that we actually have. What were they pointing out? What did they feel like the resources they were talking about should be allocated to? We'll be getting into that conversation, deeply into it actually, so be part of it. I guarantee you it's not something you should miss. And right after that, we'll be having, of course, more updates on weather and climate coming in from Mollen, and also the traffic flow this Monday morning. Traffic or no traffic? Are you ready for whatever situation will be happening on the road? Well, that and much more on Good Morning Uganda. Notice a truck that failed to negotiate a hill around Ntinda Stretcher Road. Now, luckily in that incident, lives were not lost, but anything could have happened. Again, brings us to a call of caution. What's happening? This overloading business, how are we going to beat it? But we also did see a truck that also rammed into other 5 vehicles, and we lost a couple of people. So this weekend was quite a heavy one, especially when it comes to accidents. Well, this morning we have a lot to talk about between us and you, our lovely viewers, and also to review this week, considering that it's going to be a very special week, especially for the Christian fraternity, all the way from Thursday until Monday, knowing very well that Christians have been doing their Lent right now in the 40 days of Lent, and this weekend could mark the end of this Lent, and obviously special days to be celebrated. Well, this morning I'm joined, of course, by the usual faces. I do have Kirabo, Nyonyintono, I have Mollen, Kenyena. So did notice a truck that failed to negotiate a hill around Ntinda Stretcher Road. Now, luckily in that incident, lives were not lost, but anything could have happened. Again, brings us to a call of caution. What's happening? This overloading business, how are we going to beat it? But we also did see a truck that also rammed into other 5 vehicles, and we lost a couple of people. So this weekend was quite a heavy one, especially when it comes to accidents. Well, this morning we have a lot to talk about between us and you, our lovely viewers, and also to review this week, considering that it's going to be a very special week, especially for the Christian fraternity, all the way from Thursday until Monday, knowing very well that Christians have been doing their Lent right now in the 40 days of Lent, and this weekend could mark the end of this Lent, and obviously special days to be celebrated. Well, this morning I'm joined, of course, by the usual faces. I do have Kirabo, Nyonyintono, I have Mollen, Kenyena. So did notice a truck that failed to negotiate a hill around Ntinda Stretcher Road. Now, luckily in that incident, lives were not lost, but anything could have happened. Again, brings us to a call of caution. What's happening? This overloading business, how are we going to beat it? But we also did see a truck that also rammed into other 5 vehicles, and we lost a couple of people. So this weekend was quite a heavy one, especially when it comes to accidents. Well, this morning we have a lot to talk about between us and you, our lovely viewers, and also to review this week, considering that it's going to be a very special week, especially for the Christian fraternity, all the way from Thursday until Monday, knowing very well that Christians have been doing their Lent right now in the 40 days of Lent, and this weekend could mark the end of this Lent, and obviously special days to be celebrated. Well, this morning I'm joined, of course, by the usual faces. I do have Kirabo, Nyonyintono, I have Mollen, Kenyena. So did notice a truck that failed to negotiate a hill around Ntinda Stretcher Road. Now, luckily in that incident, lives were not lost, but anything could have happened. Again, brings us to a call of caution. What's happening? This overloading business, how are we going to beat it? But we also did see a truck that also rammed into other 5 vehicles, and we lost a couple of people. So this weekend was quite a heavy one, especially when it comes to accidents. Well, this morning we have a lot to talk about between us and you, our lovely viewers, and also to review this week, considering that it's going to be a very special week, especially for the Christian fraternity, all the way from Thursday until Monday, knowing very well that Christians have been doing their Lent right now in the 40 days of Lent, and this weekend could mark the end of this Lent, and obviously special days to be celebrated. Well, this morning I'm joined, of course, by the usual faces. I do have Kirabo, Nyonyintono, I have Mollen, Kenyena. So did notice a truck that failed to negotiate a hill around Ntinda Stretcher Road. Now, luckily, in that incident, lives were not lost, but anything could have happened. Again, brings us to a call of caution. What's happening? This overloading business, how are we going to beat it? But we also did see a truck that also rammed into other 5 vehicles, and we lost a couple of people. So this weekend was quite a heavy one, especially when it comes to accidents. Well, this morning we have a lot to talk about between us and you, our lovely viewers, and also to review this week, considering that it's going to be a very special week, especially for the Christian fraternity, all the way from Thursday until Monday, knowing very well that Christians have been doing their Lent right now in the 40 days of Lent, and this weekend could mark the end of this Lent, and obviously special days to be.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Five minutes past 7 a.m., 3rd of April 2023. Good morning, Uganda. Welcome to the newsreel. This morning, my name is Philomena. Mastiko, of course, with Felix Nkunda, here to have a discussion about the alternative budget that was presented by opposition in Parliament just on Friday. They do believe that theirs is quite a more practical budget compared to the one that we do have, or that was approved by Parliament back in January this year. Now, theirs, we could say, stands at about 49 trillion, and they did go down to break it. But here's one interesting thing about this budget. The theme here stands for a human rights approach to resource allocation. A human rights approach to resource allocation. Now, according to the opposition, the proposed budget takes on a human rights approach, targeting and spending on sector priorities which directly impact the common man. And amongst some of the strategic proposals that were made by this budget, and financial prudence, you're looking at accountability and value for money through various reforms in the Ministry of Finance, promotion and modernization of agriculture. They did talk about improved preventive healthcare system, improved quality of education. They're looking at things like development and maintenance of infrastructure, to mention but a few. And we would really love to look into this. This approach, is it practical? When you talk about taking on an approach of human rights to make sure that you look at areas that affect the common person, what's the practicability of this here in our country? Well, we'll be having a conversation around that between myself and Felix, and feel free to be part of it. Get onto our social media platforms, Twitter and WhatsApp, #UBCGMU and 0709602592 respectively. Tell us, what do you think about this budget? Do you think it could actually work? Do you think it's something that maybe we could look into? Maybe we could find a middle ground, if that is very possible. And I would just, Felix, what do you think about this, using a human rights approach to fund all these key parts of the economy that affects the common man? What is the practicability of this?
Well, Philomena, allow me to first and foremost appreciate the fact that the trajectory of political practices in Uganda has evidently grown, or the bar has actually been raised partially, and with the evidence of some of the things that we see. The need to defy the rhetorical appreciation of the word opposition is seemingly gaining a bit of momentum. And I can highlight a couple of various scenarios. I can give you one. Most recent, we saw the Democratic Party have an MOU with government, which also did include, among others, the party president of the Democratic Party becoming a member of cabinet
Yes.
in a sitting government. The seat that was the party NRM did accept to support a member of DP into the seat of the Iyala, and probably also share on various other positions. Most recent, we have also seen a couple of people from various opposition parties work with government, yet still members of the other political parties. Case in point, you have a Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development. I think there was an understanding also with the UPC, one of the oldest parties in Uganda. Now, why I try to bring it from that far is to appreciate the seeming change of political practice, the face of political practices in the country seems to raise the bar slightly, and the evidence is in some of the aspects that I've given you. Now, when it comes to this particular one, when I saw last week on Friday, the National Unity Platform political party,
Yes.
being the lead party in terms of holding the opposition seat in the August House, did organize to come out and share with Ugandans an alternative, in their opinion, that relates to the budgetary framework. And the same as an alternative, if I'm to read into the mind of the Honorable Matthias Impuga, later on Honorable Sentam Kyagulanyi, is that they are taking center stage of their role as the party that is in check of government, being the lead in parliament. That in as much as, because government had also did provide its framework, I think a week ago.
Yes, they did. Starting at about 50 trillion, their budget, and they gave a breakdown. Yes.
Yeah. So the opposition comes in to say, no, look here, we also the shadow government. We have a Minister of Finance, we have a leader of opposition, we have all these people. Let's put together something we can share with you. Probably, if there's anything to pick for government, that's questionable. Secondly, purposes of also showing political relevancy and contribution. For long, we have been having these discussions and questions that what is the role of the opposition?
Yes.
And up till today, we still question the role of the opposition in socio-economic stability. You know, is their role only cut out for political activism? But this that we saw was quite meritable to the National Unity Platform.
And I must say, especially when it comes to issues of the economy, I have seen a lot of pressure being mounted on opposition asking, okay, in a scenario like this, I mean, what would the opposition do? What would the opposition say? How would they approach this issue, this economic crisis?
And this that was done was answering directly some of these questions. Now, if having appreciated that demeanor, if you want to lodge a simple inquest in what the proposals they had, you may want to understand exactly what is their area of interest. You did read the theme of their budgetary framework.
Yes, they actually talk about
for them, in fact, when you read the heading, the theme, let's call it the
a
theme,
human rights approach to resource allocation.
Now, that's something we need to and for me, that was my area of discussion. One, is there a direct relationship between human rights and socio-economic growth? You see, in law, when you get facts before you, you have to unpackage the facts and get issues. I don't know if people used to do problem questions in university. They will give you a whole narrative of scenarios, but you have to pick out so that you break it down and give a solution at the end of it. So for us, you have to appreciate the facts. You raise issues, legal issues, then resolve the issues. But of course, also with the law applicable. Now, in this case, one of the issues you raise out of the presentation, the very first question, to dissect the theme, because the theme does duplicate what is in the whole entire. Now, Is there a direct relationship, Philomena, between appreciation of human rights and socio-economic development?
Well, they do. They play, human rights indeed play quite a major role when it comes to resources. And depending on how people anyway define the human rights on several occasions here.
One would say human rights are universal. So maybe they were taking a baseline of them being just what they are. But the reason why I asked that, Philomena, is that having answered that, whether yes or no, the next question would be, are all jurisdictions that are economically fairly or stable appreciating human rights? How do you use human rights to rehabilitate socio-economic welfare of your citizens? How? And for me, that's the biggest task we want to give to our brothers on the extreme. That this is now a new appreciation of how you can change the scenario or the sounds of whatever you wish. That we are looking at, and if I'm to read into their minds, here's the thing: let's create a sober environment in terms of human rights appreciation, that people will be able to thrive openly and engage openly in business without fear or favor. And you see, when you talk about human rights, it cuts across, and you can appreciate this in various areas. One, you can look at it in terms of allocation of resources.
Yes.
Okay. This means that we will want to deal with this in the absence of things like nepotism, tribalism, sectarism, just to mention but a few. But the manifestation of that comes alongside those lines. Second, that when we create an atmosphere where we appreciate human rights, there are things that will not happen. And of course, we shall build courage for probably investment. Third, when you look at human rights relatedly directly to socio-economic development, you're going to look at how do people respond to an environment that is enabling. But having looked at all these, Philomena, there are many questions that come with it. How appreciable is such a thought? Can you stand this proposal far from politics? I don't know if that comes out. The challenge is that, can you stand far from this proposal as politicians and not, because when you bring in the connection of human rights, you're using this forum of socioeconomic anticipation to deal with the challenges you've been saying time and again. For me, I feel that the presentation was marred by far politics than socioeconomic pronouncements that later on would change the trajectory of how people live their livelihoods. Now, that's the other question we ask ourselves. Where do you draw the line? Or you don't have to draw the line when you're talking about politics and socioeconomic welfare. Now, that's the same exact problem we face even today. How do you reply? Because it is not, it is no longer a myth that we lose a lot of money through corruption. But how does politics respond to that? Because the corruption or the money we lose directly affects socioeconomic development, but can the politics directly remedy that?
Or we have say, I mean, looking at the situation here, don't you think politics has actually been intertwined with the economics of the country?
And that's the evidence of what we face today. That when we say Philomena has, in a year, there are people who are corrupt or who steal from government, take a tune presumably at about up to $1 trillion every financial year. Now, most of, probably 90%, 80% of these people are direct political government related positions. Because you'll hear most of them are cows, ministers, you know, all these things. Now, how can politics, and this brings me to what we're saying about the presentation of the NUP, that where is the place for politics to relate with socioeconomic welfare? Is politics willing as a practice, or politicians, are they willing to confront the fears, the challenges, all these things that come with this? Now, that's why they're coming to say, for us, we are even making it much better. We are relating human rights, that human rights has a direct effect on socio-economic welfare. The big question is, this alternative, is it workable or not workable in what's happening lately?
Okay. But also when you look at our budget, and maybe just in comparison, the budget that was passed by Parliament, Felix, do you think it addresses some of these issues when you look at the equal distribution of resources? Because I do see this is also one of the major things that this alternative budget from opposition is looking at. When you go back to our budget, the national budget for 2023-2024, do you think it has cut out some of these, what do I call them? The basics or the key things that the opposition is looking at an equal development for everybody, not just for a select few. Do you think these are some of the loopholes that we'll find in our own national budget?
Well, I'll say this. The direct remedy to the socio-economic challenges as given by our budget framework and also later on the opposition must be anchored towards aspects that build individuals primarily, later on families and communities. The narrative is not any different because the problems faced by Ugandans today are not different from those that anticipated when the Mpugas and the team and the guys at Honorable Mpuga and the colleagues are also making this alternative budgetary framework. The problems are not different. However, the solutions are the different ones. Now, the solutions are only informed by political style. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
You understand that how I want to govern the country will define the kind of approach I will use. However, the problems will not change because they are not defined. Some of them,
yes,
because some of them are causations. For example, when you go to challenges like what is happening in Kejong region,
there would be different approaches. Yes.
Because of the problems and how they manifest. Now, there are some government-made problems. Others are natural. Others are third world country problems that in as much as you
despite the efforts you put,
they have to be there, yes, because of the fact that there's a place where a country stands and it can't be far from its own being. Now, it means that those problems, global, regional, and national, should inform the fashion of solutions we come up with. Sadly, you may not be able to rule out the contribution of politics in your need to formulate some of these solutions. Okay?
Yes.
But it leaves a lot of questions, Philomena. Are we answering to the problems of Ugandans as they are or as we see them? What's the difference? That this goes without mention that one of the challenges we suffer today as a country is resource mismanagement. And we can give you many examples. Why? Because at some point in political practices, there comes a point where the answers you get towards the problems of the wananchi or the citizens are not determined by the actual, how you face the problems, but they're determined how the respondents see the problems. I don't know if that comes off clear. And I can give you an example. Ugandans here will say, we don't have food, we don't have school fees, we need medical. But the government will come out and say, first you have to build a power dam and a road from somewhere where people will never use it. Because that's, for them, they're achieving as they planned. on their spectrum,
Yes.
not in response to what is actually needed.
So the thing is that there is a misalignment between the
That's the right
priorities
word.
of government
The
and
needs
also looking at the
and
needs
wants.
of the basic Ugandans.
Yes, that the wananchi needs. What do you think Ugandans need today? One, they need to have some fairly good shelter. Two, fairly an economy where they can earn fairly. They must be able to have food available, fair prices and what, but they should also be able to move on a fairly affordable fares. Now, what do they get? When you look at the budgetary framework, what do you get vis-a-vis what you need? And you can look at it from all angles. Start with education, go to health, go to transport. Now, are we, and this is the challenge, the irony, even something that comes alive in this proposal for our colleagues in NOP, that when you read through it keenly, you go to the banking sector, you go to farming. I had my senior Honorable Matthias Impuga, when for him he said, for us, we don't need, he made a statement and backed by evidence of the replication of offices and how much money government spends on such depleting, having the same officers do the same work. And he gave examples. In his opinion, among the many things he said, he thought that it was irrelevant to have resident district commissioners.
Yes.
And he believed that if these were district farming officers or agricultural officers, it would give a mileage, Uganda being a backbone. You understand? Now, you look at things like diesel, PISO, or he made many comments about that. Because NRM came to power through a challenging time that was backed by violence, gun, war, guerrillas, all these things. That's, for them, they found it needful to have a security hand in every district because of their history. So they believe that when you have another DC, you're on ground, you're the head of security in a region, you're informative, these are representing the president. Now, because we are having a contestation of a military-backed or mindset government, because of how it came to power and what went through, vis-a-vis a government that seemingly wants to portray or is portraying an approach of democracy, and they want nothing to do with the militaristic. Now, that's the clash. That's why I told you there's a big confrontation, and when you go through entirely, we'll not go through the whole, but entirely you'll notice that every party is bringing to life
What they believe in.
what they want and how they see things.
Yes.
Vis-a-vis what the people. Now, some of us are stuck, and lately, Ugandans are stuck in that approach of the NRM. The NRA approach is stuck up till the 2023 today. You find that the military will take the biggest probably chunk of, because for them that's what they know.
That's what they
That
register.
you must first of all guarantee security. You'll find them in Congo, you'll find them in Somalia, you'll find them in Sudan, you'll find them in, they're all over. Because that is how, so when you ask me whether, and when I saw this human rights thing, because these people have felt, in their opinion, pushed to the wall in terms of human rights abuse. The National Unity Platform has come out consistently to say even there are still people missing, they have, everything they talk about, there is an aspect of human rights. Now, because for them, it's a party that has, whether or not, been a victim of abuse of human rights, just as they say. They want to attach that to everything they want to do. Just like, as I said, the NRA then, because it went through a bush war, it has to attach a militaristic face. For example, lately, you go to any ministry, out of 10 ministries, you find that at least 6 or 7, they have army people. Go to internal affairs, go to foreign affairs, there's a general, there's a colonel, now, because whenever you see something is like seemingly not working well, the president will say, I'm going to send my army to sort things there. You see the Uganda police, you'll see. Now, that, because that is what they have appreciated over the time, and that will determine how they also allocate money or even spend it. And the same is applicable to the National Unity Platform. When they brought out, you see that their budget is mad by far. It's tainted by that aspect of
when you look at their
rights.
budget here, they're saying that special attention has to be given to a number of sectors. They mentioned health. They did come up with education. They looked at social protection programs, and they have a very heavy belief that these will benefit an ordinary Ugandan. And they talked about in detail the healthcare system, saying that every Ugandan has to have the ability to access quality and affordable healthcare services for the purpose of increasing their productivity, and also talking about the fact that health workers and teachers must be paid better. When you also look at government, I am sure that these are some of the people they did also have in top priority. The only issue is that we saw the scuffles that happened between these two specific categories, teachers and medical workers, when it came to, you know, talking about their salaries, their welfare. I mean, we went through that whole lot last year until we saw priority being given to them in this new budget. So I do believe that maybe that the opposition and the ruling party do understand how serious it is. But also looking at them talking about focusing on creating an environment that is conducive to business growth and job creation, talking about deliberate investments in infrastructure, including roads, railways, and the energy sector. Now, this is very also similar when you look at the budget that we have, because the proposed budget for the financial year of 2023-2024, we look at amongst the top priorities government set out to do is invest in small-scale industries and also businesses where they do believe that a common man would have to start or would try to make sure that they get themselves heavily involved alongside other priorities. So I'm thinking most of these things really have a middle ground. You'll find that they are proposing this, they're proposing this, but how different is it? Because if we are looking at the common man, is it that they're looking at it from a different spectrum? How does that work? Because when I was reading through the budgets, things are here and there. They're all looking, they're having the common interest. So how different is it?
It has to go back to approach, Philomena. Again, which is also backed up by ideology. Now, the ideology which is informed by what I told you, the previous appreciation of the party, who they are, how they came into play, and what their intentions are. So that kind of ideology will inform how they will, what is priority. As I told you, what is a need and a want in terms of budget allocation is what most of governments struggle with. And I've given you examples, Philomena.
Yeah.
Some people, government will say, for us, our aim is to have a road network throughout the country. That's what government wants. Because for them, on their scorecard, it works for them. That this government, it built roads. But how does this directly affect the growth of people you're trying to work for? Same thing for that. When you are giving me that, Philomena, something came to my mind here, and I want to ask myself, when you make a budget, one of the other things that comes with budget planning and what is resource.
Yes.
And this is for me where my colleagues had a big challenge. How are you going to make this money? How are you going to make this money you want to spend?
Yes.
I felt that there was a bit of gap in that area because if you want to say you want to deal with some taxes and they are hefty, what is the alternative? You want to do away with political influence, what is the alternative?
Because there has to be something in place
There must
of
be
that.
something.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're going to end up stuck with a budget with no finances.
And what's a budget without finances?
I mean, how far can you go with that? Secondly, in relation to that, that we did lastly looking at, can we diffuse political activism from the aspects or the issues of national importance? Can we?
If I'm going to give you a direct answer to that, no.
But there must be a place where we agree to
Yes.
not take politics. And do you know what that place is? A place where we selectively appreciate what Ugandans need than what we want them to have or get. There are countries that will spend, and some being even Uganda, let's focus on Uganda. We have had scenarios where we spent on probably purchasing cars. I remember sometime in COVID, people give cars. Was that a want or a need? Because at ground, people were asking for totally different things. Food, what? Now, that's what I'm saying. And for any leader out there, you must agree that there's a place where you leave the jacket, the political jacket, and take on the service.
But Felix, realistically speaking, looking at us, I think you did talk about how it's very important, and I totally agree with you, how politics should be separate from the economic welfare. These should be two different entities.
They must have a point.
Yeah, but looking at our foundation as a country, and I do believe very many other low-developed countries or still developing countries here in Africa, do you think that there is a possibility of us, because I believe that the moment we separate these two, I think we'll start seeing progress in some of the things that we have been really demanding to see progress in. But do you think there is a possibility of us detaching one from the other?
Yes.
Or there is?
Yes, Philomena.
Okay.
Don't you think other countries, and most say we shall focus on the Western country, don't you think they have politics? Don't they vote leaders?
They do.
Now, we have to agree to give birth to institutional mandates, institutionalizing the most valuable aspects that contribute to human livelihood or welfare. Let them be institutional and functional.
They need
Do
a
you know
rebirth.
yes, and sadly today you find that politics is intertwined in every aspect. For example, even jobs. You find a job that should be merit-based is political-based. That's why you don't get results. Sadly, let's keep to the facts that are known. There's a particular individual who was taken to a parliamentary inquiry committee. And this individual is running one of the biggest investments of government, but they're not even quarterly qualified to run them. Why? Because politicians. And someone boldly says, this that I hold as a job was a gift.
No, if it's
Institutionalizing.
if it's a gift and you have the capacity to run it and the capabilities to run it, then it wouldn't
Do
be
you
a
know why
problem.
government
However,
sticks to big government, Philomena? Because it is a procedural appreciation. Now, the presence of procedures in government is the need to eliminate lacunas, to avoid wastage and loss. Because what is being wasted is sweat of a cluster of people called citizens who subscribe to a particular domain financially. That's why, actually, one of the hardest things is getting some of these government appointments because of the rigorous procedures you go through.
So can we say
Now,
government is self-sabotaging?
can we say that's the reality? They know what should be done, yet they actually don't even want to
Do it.
to go there. That's why I've told you that if we just give back the power to institutions to drive their mandate legally as given or cut out by policy. I'll give you another example. Do you know who's the governor of Uganda?
Bank of Uganda?
Yes, sorry, Bank of Uganda.
Well, we currently don't have a governor.
But
We
it's
have
coming
a
to a year and a
yes.
half almost since the late Mutebile died. Isn't that a challenge?
Very, very
There was a time in
big
Uganda,
challenge.
the judiciary didn't have a chief justice for about 2 years. Now, institutional decay is what causes these loopholes, let alone where the country, the beneficiaries don't benefit rather, and also that now, for example, the absence of someone in an office as big as that trickles down. There was a big struggle, I think 2 weeks ago, about printing money with the signature of the deputy. What does the law say? Now, there's also that riffraff. So, and this is all in the answering to what you did allude to earlier. Is there a need for us to diffuse politics from national socio-economic enterprise growth? There's a place for politics, honestly and truly, as a watchdog, as overseers. But there are places where we must agree to disagree, that we must let these institutions run with their true fabric, and we can break one by one to the other.
Well, we are yet to see what is going to be done to this alternative budget framework that was released by opposition on Friday. They did talk about a number of things. Some of the sectors they believe a priority should be given. And in fact, in the statement, they said a government is giving a priority to things that don't necessarily benefit the common man. Their argument here is that the Wananchi people have to be the bigger beneficiaries of the budget, and this is what they had. This is what really controlled their thought process in whatever it is they were planning for, or they talked about. Even when you look at the different amounts of money that were allocated to different sectors, in their mind they thought the local person, the ordinary person, the person on the last bit on the radar should be benefiting from all of this. My question is, I don't know how. I wish there will be, probably could be a discussion between the Ministry of Finance. I don't know what plan it is.
That won't happen.
It won't happen.
But for me,
I mean, if we could address some of the issues, if some of these things.
I'll tell you something, Philomena. Politics is politics. We never pick leaves from. I've not seen a scenario like that, at least in Uganda.
Yes.
But one thing we agree about, we shall agree on, Philomena, you, myself, and our viewers, that this alternative that was given highlighted a couple of areas that were wanting. And one of the areas is the humongous wastage our government has ordained, and areas that are quite evident. I think that's an area for us to look into as we struggle with economic hardships.
We will have a real discussion on that.
Honestly,
when it comes to
we spend so much
allocation
in the most useless areas.
Anyway, right now we'll look at the big stories in our papers, the Daily Nation and the Citizen. Looking at the Daily Nation, enough is enough. 3 people have been killed since the protest started on March 20th, and reason at last. Also the drama at Bomas ahead of poor results, and fresh squeeze as banks raise cost of loans. And looking at new STI strains, scientists find 2 strains of sexually transmitted diseases, and Christians mark Palm Sunday as Holy Week starts. And the Citizen, just how safe is your tap water? Zanzibar moves to address challenges in tourism. Ruto asks opposition to call off protests in Kenya, and Tanzania leads switch to EVs in East Africa. All of those stories you can find in the dailies at the Daily Nation, New Vision, and Daily Monitor plus the Citizen. We'll go for a break. Mollen coming up next with more weather and climate.
Of supporting health in Uganda. This year, the Kabaka Birthday Run will mark its 10-year anniversary on Sunday, 16th April at Lubidi, starting 7 a.m. and continue the fight to end AIDS by 2030. Buy your running kit today at 20,000 shillings from Airtel shops, Benchuanuka, Fubani, New Taxi Pack, or Majestic Brands office in Bulangi Mango. You can also pay using Airtel Money. Dial *185 *5#. Kits purchased using Airtel Money shall be picked from Airtel Wampe or Shop. Paul is sponsored by
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
Glow as you are with the new Spark 10 series smartphone from Airtel in partnership with Tecno. Own the timelines with picture-perfect selfies using the 32-megapixel selfie camera, 256GB storage, G88 gaming processor, and a strong battery to last the whole day. Toakana.
The Spark 10 smartphone comes with free 3GB from Airtel and 100% bonus on weekly and monthly bundles every month for 3 months. So you can stay connected to a world of possibilities. Dial *100*5# to enjoy free data. The new Spark 10 is available in all selected Tecno shops countrywide. Airtel, the smartphone network in partnership with Tecno. Stop at nothing.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Good morning, Uganda. It is time now that we look at the traffic on the roads. Now we're going to focus mainly on the Kampala-Jinja highway in some of the places that we're actually seeing a little bit of traffic. That is, if you're coming in from areas of Ntinda, joining into the main highway, there's a bit of traffic building up right there. Also using Katalima Road, it looks like there is a little bit of traffic just in a few distances as you join the Kampala-Jinja Highway. Also the Nakawa area, especially around the business park, that is where you have quite some intense traffic right there. And that is also as you join into from Newport Bay Road, that is from the side of Luzira. Looks like there is a bit of traffic right there as you join into that is Kampala-Jinja Road. We're also looking at mostly as you head into town, traffic starts to clear towards Lugogo. There you have clear traffic, and that goes all the way up to Nakawa area. You're looking at quite clear traffic. Also joining in from areas of Bugolobi towards the roundabout, you have clear traffic right there. The same road that is joining in from Wampeo Avenue, that is where we have a little bit of traffic building up from Wampeo Avenue, but also just a short distance towards the roundabout. Other than that, before that, you look at quite clear traffic. Now, away from that, you also have around the traffic lights right there. That is where you have traffic building up, especially coming in from Access Road, that is from the upper side. 8th Street as well, joining in from Mukwano, you have a bit of traffic, but then again also that is a short distance. It looks like that's actually clear. Now if you're taking a detour, that is of course if you're going downtown using Station Road, that looks to be quite okay in terms of traffic. Also moving further towards Kampala Road, looks like there is really quite clear traffic for you right there. Just a small distance, that is between the City Square and joining into Kampala Road. That's where you have a bit of traffic building up, but also that is just a short distance. Other than that, you're also looking at more intense traffic building up as you head towards Bombo Road, leaving Kampala Road. Also the upper roads seem to be okay. Speak Road seems to be quite fine. You also have much traffic starting to build up for Nakasero Road, as well as Lumumba Avenue towards the roundabout that is around Speak Road. But again, also before that, you look at quite clear traffic. Now the weather update for this morning, we'll be looking at the satellite as well. We do have quite an intense system starting to build up over the Lake Victoria Basin, especially towards the western area. And that means that that could be bringing us rains, especially for western Lake Victoria Basin. We're looking at areas of Masaka. We're looking at Rengo, Kalisizo. We already have that system over the area. Now the same system is actually also continuing towards the central part of Lake Victoria Basin. So that takes in areas of Kampala, Entebbe, Wakiso. We're already seeing a few drizzles coming in, especially for the islands of Lake Victoria, that is over Kalangala. We're looking at that also likely to bring rains for the central part of the country, as well as western Lake Victoria Basin and southwestern Uganda. Other than that, we're looking at quite a clear day, clear morning for much of the country, starting off with mostly sunny and cloudy intervals. We do have a rainy system that is also headed towards northwestern Uganda, that is towards the Karamoja region, and most likely that will also be bringing rains later as the morning progresses, especially around areas of Kotido and areas of Moroto as well. We could be looking at a few rains developing, and that could actually extend up to the central northern Uganda. That means that we could also be looking at rains over there. We'll go ahead and take a look at the forecast and also check on the temperatures that we're expecting for this morning for most places within the country, and that is coming in from the Uganda National Meteorological Authority. We're looking at a rainy morning that is forecast for areas of that is the western part of Lake Victoria, where we have Masaka, Kalisizo, Sembabli and Rakai, and also temperatures quite low at 24 degrees. We're also forecasting isolated rains for southwestern Uganda, and we're expecting temperatures to start off at 24. That similar system will actually be reappearing later in the afternoon. Quite a rainy day forecast over there. Also looking at the eastern side of Lake Victoria, that is where we have Tororo, Busia, Iganga, as well as Jinja. We're looking at a rainy morning for you. Also, that will be starting off with a chilly 25 degrees, and most likely also that will reappear later in the afternoon. Across eastern Uganda, that is for areas of Soroti, we're looking at Katakwi, we're looking at Amuria as well as Kumi. We are forecasting isolated rains as well, and that will be starting off with quite a warm 27 degrees, clearing mostly for sunny intervals later on in the afternoon. The central part of northern Uganda, we're looking at Ajumani, Gulu, Kitgum, as well as Padel. We are forecasting sunny intervals. That is also starting off with quite a pleasant morning at 26 degrees, but we'll be having rains later on as the morning progresses, crossing over into the afternoon. Eastern parts, we're looking at the eastern parts of Central, Ruwero, Wobulenzi, Burudi, Nakaseke. We're forecasting rains. That will be starting off with a chilly 25 degrees. Also looking at the possibility of having those rains reappear later in the afternoon. Now, across Mount Elgon Highlands, we're looking at areas of Mbale, Bududa, Boko, and Sironko. We are forecasting rains. That will also be starting off with a cool 24 degrees. That will be across several places within the area. The central parts of Lake Victoria Basin, that is where we have Kampala, Mukono, Entebbe, as well as Wakiso. We are forecasting isolated rains. We already have cloudy systems building up across several places, and a few drops of showers starting to come through. That will also continue throughout the morning and reappearing later in the afternoon across several places. We're starting off quite chilly at 23 degrees centigrade. Now, some of the extreme events happening around the world, we follow up on the tropical storm that did develop across the U.S. and so far has killed 29 people. Actually, from what is coming through, that is for the areas of the U.S., there was a tornado that came with a violent storm, and that was perusing through the southern and midwestern regions of the United States. And what we know is that this has affected areas of Memphis and Tennessee, and also across, that was through Saturday and Sunday. And what has been reported from the Memphis department, they are looking at more of the homes that have been affected, also a lot of property that has been damaged from this violent storm. Also, this is, they did add, the Tennessee Department of Health on Sunday did report that they also had additional 3 weather-related deaths in more than 3 counties. And they have not provided details as of now, but they're looking at much more of that being across the areas of Memphis, that is Mississippi, and Arkansas, that is Indiana as well, where there were a lot of damages resulting from this storm. Now, also, what was reported is that 15 deaths did come from, from the effects of the tornado, and also much more of that was related to the tropical storm that reappeared in the area through Sunday and Saturday. Now, the National Storm Prediction Center did warn on severe weather events coming in Sunday for parts of north and northeastern Texas around Dallas. Now, what happens is that most of these international organizations, at the moment they actually give such warnings, you expect that they will have a lot of people moving through from the areas that are expected to be affected, but also have rescue operations on ground in case there are people who are still left in the area and need to be evacuated. And this is what the National Storm Prediction Center actually was doing on Sunday, and a lot of damage was avoided, especially in terms of the people that died from this event, as more of them had actually already moved. But also we did see that there were aircrafts that were trying to, monitor in the areas. Unfortunately, most of them were also affected by the storm. We also follow up on the report that did come through from the IPCC, and so far what they have been able to give out in terms of what can be followed, or what we would call the pathway or the roadmap to making sure that most of the countries are actually avoiding disaster in terms of extreme weather events. Now, we know that they did bring out a synthetic report looking at how extreme weather events will actually become more widespread and pronounced in every increment of warming. The target is 1.5 degrees degrees Celsius increment for the entire world. If you're looking at years up to 2030, we do know that this has not been achieved, especially from the contributions that we're seeing from all the countries. But if we go beyond that, even from the images right there on the screen, you see the red colors being more pronounced as you add the figures. So from 1.5 to 2 degrees, it means we're looking at more of catastrophic events that could result from a lot of heating. Now, these are some of the reports that they bring out, or the climate scenarios. These are tested and tried and tested policy measures that they are recommending. And this can work only if we actually look at reducing emissions and also put climate resilience if we're to scale up and apply more, widespread action to look at the path forward that could lead us to keep the dream within the 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is something that the IPCC has talked about, but also adaptation options that are becoming more pronounced, and also they're looking at how effective those could be. And this is where we are even right now. But you also look at some of the, adverse effects that they have related to, the inaction that a lot of governments have continued to put. We have looked at more of those coming through, and these are actually human-induced. They're looking at adverse impacts from human-induced climate change that will continue to intensify. That is to the extent which the current and future generations will experience a hotter and a different world. Well, that will have to depend on the action that we put across. Of course, they did also put future scenarios from 70 years from now, and then that goes up to 2050, and then 2000, that is 2090, looking at what could happen. And where you see the red colors increasing, that means temperatures are getting warmer, the world is getting warmer, and we have more extreme weather events. That is the situation that we could be looking at. However, they also provide solutions to this, which is where they have asked for, all the countries to present their contributions, especially in terms of energy. The energy sector has been a big contribution to the emissions. That means as long as we can all cut emissions, move away from fossil fuels, we could actually have a pathway back to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we avoid all those red colors that you're seeing. We avoid all that warming, because it means we'll keep seeing more storms hitting places and people dying from this. We see more floods affecting communities, more infrastructure being washed away because of extreme weather events. And that is not something that we're looking forward for, or we want to leave for future generations to also, start from that. We need to actually get started. Well, that does it for now. We do have a Good Morning Uganda agenda that will be coming in right after this. Later than that, we'll also be looking at the sports updates and then heading into Good Morning Uganda Extra. My name is Mollen Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful Monday.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello? This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.